Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody, to today's episode of the Global Skeptics podcast. We are delighted to have Dr. Richard Brown with us. I can call you Richard, I believe. You already said that.
You may.
So, why don't you introduce yourself briefly?
Oh, hello. I'm Richard Brown. So I am a philosopher at the City University of New York, organic life form. Currently residing in the local group, although I have plans to visit in the supercluster someday, if possible. But, currently hanging out pretty locally around here on Earth and so forth, teaching philosophy, neuroscience, and psychology.
All right, wonderful. So let's jump into it. I hold to views that are more. Hi, John. John wanted to say hi.
Who's John?
Oh, some guy watching the stream. It's okay. So what I wanted to ask is, I hold to more Aristotelian Thomistic views, something. What are your thoughts about those? Like, do you feel that some of these more ancient outlooks are outdated, or what's your take?
That's a good question. So certainly, like, the history of science is a history of kind of trying to move away from Aristotelianism in some sense, and certainly the standard picture in philosophy and philosophy of science is presented that way. With Descartes sort of trying to get rid of two of the four causes, and so that's one way of thinking about what's going on there. Saying that we could explain everything in terms of I guess one way to put it is that what he thought the world out there had two of the causes, and the world in here had two of the other causes. But whatever you think about the Descartes history and all that stuff, some people think that the way science progressed, we left those notions behind. But then there's been recent arguments, probably you're aware of them, by Thomas Nagel's example, using consciousness, which is sort of my area that I have special expertise in, and think about the most these days. But he thought, for reasons having to do with like the hard problem of consciousness and so forth, that you needed to have some Aristotelian notion of science, maybe reintroduced or something like that. And so I certainly can see why someone would end up in a position like that.
I'm not cutting you off. So your own view is very much naturalist, right, in the area of philosophy of mind?
My own view is very much like, how am I supposed to know? I'm more of an agnostic than anything else, and I don't have really firm beliefs in any one position. And I kind of split my credences. I think I can see how different pictures of the world we might come to have evidence to thinking it's this way versus that way. So I would assign some level of belief or credence, as we technically call it, in this way of thinking and maybe that way. Okay. So I have some, but to answer your question, I can see you want me to just say yes, but it's more complicated.
No, that's fine. I have no problem.
So I think then where I would put my highest level of credence, if I was looking at the landscape and I was sort of putting down like where I was going to make my bets, I think naturalism would be something that I think it would be nice if it were true. I don't think there's any reason to think it's false. That's very compelling. So certainly, but I wouldn't say no, it's true or something like that.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say I am a naturalist.
How come like common objections to naturalistic or materialistic or whatever you want to call it views do not faze you? And I can think of all of them. So so there's multiple ways to like account for the materiality. You're familiar with Aristotelian ways, which is that difference between intellect and will and the rest of the body, and so on and so forth. You're aware of the Cartesian way, which is there's two substances, or even idealism, which is that everything is the body is in fact what's the emergent property, it's not the mind. So
right,
none of those objections phase your support of naturalism in the area of mind, because I thought that the mind is one of those areas where naturalism was kind of shaky. Other areas you might be very well in your rights to say that, but how come those objections don't phase you?
So I guess if you wanted to know personally about me, certainly when I was younger, probably I was some kind of dualist. Before I started studying philosophy and thinking about the brain in any serious way, before I even knew I had a brain, really. I kind of, and from various experiences that I had. Let's just say that I went to a couple Grateful Dead shows and leave it at that. But I had a couple of experiences that made me think that maybe consciousness or mind or something like that was, separate from physical reality. I don't know. I had some deep experiences, and so I started thinking. I didn't think too seriously about it, though. It didn't change the way I viewed reality or anything like that. But I was like, wow, this is the mind can do some interesting things. And then when I started studying philosophy, I read Descartes, and I was like, okay, so the cogito, I think, therefore I am, that stuff. I can doubt that I have a body, but I can't doubt that I have a mind. That seemed very convincing to me. I remember like my early undergraduate years, I was like, I thought Descartes was onto something. And I remember just kind of as a side reading the Meditations, and the first chapter, he's like, I'm sitting by the fire in my pajamas, but how do I know I'm not dreaming? And my head isn't made of glass. And I
love the Meditations.
Yeah, exactly right. So I was like, man, I've been there. If this is what philosophy is, like, I can do it. So it was partially that which inspired me to go. A little did I know there's a lot more serious than that crackpot little first line. Anyway, okay. So what changed my mind? I remember kind of exactly the day I changed my mind when I realized that I really wasn't a dualist, and it was because I was thinking about mental causation and how the mind and the body interact, and how the different ways that people had responded to the mind-body problem, which comes from Descartes. And so I just thought, there's lots of ways you can do it. There's 100,000 views. Parallelism, they don't interact. Occasionalism, God intercedes at every moment in time and performs a miracle. So there's all sorts of things you can say, but it just really, or you could say epiphenomenalism, right? That the view that there is no, the mind is produced by the brain, but there's no downward causation from the mind to the brain. All of those views just seem like they logically aren't contradictory, but they just seem desperate. Epiphenomenalism is like, if you can avoid it, that'd be great. So I just really felt like if the mind does anything, and if the way we understand physics is accurate, then it's got to be physical. And I've never seen a convincing reason to abandon that idea. And when you combine that with my kind of general skepticism about the a priori and about the power of human reason to penetrate reality in the way that some of these older traditions, like Aristotelian traditions, maybe are one in this group. I am lured by that, and there are days where I'm like, okay, I could almost be a rationalist. I could see how it fits. I feel the attraction to it. But then I just think, I just remember Hume comparing, this analogy in the dialogues concerning natural religion to a flea on the back of a dog, looking at the flea is pointing to the hair on the dog's back, saying, well, the world came into existence like this. See how hairs form like this. And so the world that we stand on was formed like that. And it's like, from our point of view, it's just comical. The fleas are just totally mistaken. But their limited perspective on the little things around them has led them to this grandiose conclusion, which is comically wrong. And I don't know if that's true. I certainly wouldn't say I believe that, but I don't know why we shouldn't believe it. I don't know what would rule that out. And certainly the more we learn about our place in reality and the mind, our mind, and how it works, the less, So I don't really think that this is something I sometimes say. There's this kind of, looking at the history of philosophy, this debate between Kant and Hume about what the role of reason is. And Hume famously says, look, we're not as smart as we think we are. We're basically creatures of habits, and we're trained by nature to act in various ways by the regularity of nature. And then reason comes along and makes up all these stories about it's necessary, it has to be. And Kant says, well, just let me hold on one second.
Okay, sorry.
Kant says, no, reason is important. And, we got a sapier, audir sapier or whatever. We got to dare to use our reason. The Enlightenment, Kant was very big into it. So I sort of think in that debate, I'm more on Hume's side as far as reason is concerned, but I'm more on Kant's side as far as how I would hope we could be. So I sort of see transhumanism as a route to constructing or building something somewhat like what the Kantian Enlightenment ideal reasoner is, so that we could be ourselves. I mean, to bring it sort of into the religious realm, Sartre, a famous atheist, he seemed really mad that he wasn't self-created, right? If you read Sartre, I think the worldview I'm most attracted to is existentialism. I think that's so anyway, but if Sartre was like a hardcore atheist, and he was like, if you read him, I mean, I don't really like a lot of the stuff he particularly says, but if you read what he does says, he's really mad that somebody else would create me, Sartre. Like, how could you create me, the French philosopher? So you can read that as kind of arrogant, but also I think that transhumanism is a way of kind of realizing that idea of being self-created, of making yourself, and in a way, existentialism, the whole philosophy is the idea that we are, what a person is a self-created object, which is kind of interesting, I think. And so I don't know. Anyway, that was, I kind of went off the rails there. But so that the idea is that, yeah, I'm skeptical about a priori reasonings, but I would like to think that reason is the best tool we've got, and we can improve it and become more rational, and maybe transcend the place that we are now.
So now, about the human objections, would that imply that you think you would be skeptical of like traditional proofs for God, more of those that rely on a priori reasoning?
Oh yeah.
Let's say the ontological argument.
Well, so I don't know. My position is like I consider myself an atheist with respect to all known religions of mankind. So Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, well, whatever. Buddhism's slightly different. But anyway, so I'm just straight up atheist about that stuff. However, I'm agnostic about a more abstract question about, is there a creator? So is the universe designed? I'm agnostic about that question, but I'm definitely like an atheist about the Trinity.
But what I was asking is more about the God of classical theism. What I was asking is more about God of classical theism, the types described in Aquinas, Aristotle, Lane Craig. You don't seem convinced by those traditional a priori.
Well, that's the God of the philosophers, as they say sometimes, as opposed to the God of the desert. I mean, because the God of the Old Testament, in my opinion, is a genocidal, mass murdering, masochistic, sadistic. I mean, there's just like completely immoral being. As that's what's being described in the Old Testament, the character there. But that's not the character you just described. That William Lane Craig and those guys are endured. They're supremely rational, morally perfect. Old Testament dude's not morally perfect, my man. Not even close. So. Or not even rational, actually. That dude in the Old Testament is described in ways that seem downright human in the level of rationality and emotionality and so forth. And that was what struck me as a kid, because I was raised in a very religious household. And when I first was exposed to that stuff, I was like, this person is a psychopath. Like, if I met this person, I would like organize the resistance immediately. If this person tried to rule my country, like, I would immediately form the resistance and go like, no.
So what would you say are things?
But let me just finish though. So, but the more abstract question: is there a morally perfect, all-knowing, supremely good, all-powerful creator of the stuff we call reality? That more abstract question, I'm agnostic on. And the kind of agnosticism that I would defend is not like I'm not agnostic about Zeus. I'm atheist about Zeus. I know there's no Zeus. I'm pretty confident about that. So the kind of agnosticism that I would defend is the kind that says there's evidence on both sides of the debates, which is serious and legitimate, but there are flaws and both sides of evidence should be taken seriously. But there are loopholes, escape hatches, flaws in both sides, so that the rational conclusion on the examination of the evidence is withhold judgment. We don't know. But that doesn't mean that one. So I really think that case for it is good and the case against it is good. And they are equally good, and therefore you should say, I don't know, whenever, unless you want to. I mean, it's compatible with that view that you could be like, I think Mill had a view like this, where he was an agnostic, but he had faith, or he allowed that you could have a view like this. Like, so you could have faith, and faith, if you define faith as like hope, like, gee, it would be nice if there was more to life than, this limited time or whatever. So if that's what you mean by faith, then an agnostic like me could have it. I don't. I'm kind of a pessimistic agnostic. And every time I try to like believe there's some kind of loving personal relationship thing, I just can't. Just like I'm personally resistant to it. I just can't take it serious as a thing that could be real. So anyway, I guess so that would be my view. I know I've heard you defend the cosmological argument.
You've heard me defend,
and I just think like, you have on your YouTube channel a video of you saying you defend it. I think it's you. I don't know.
I've defended many types of cosmological arguments. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I know you would defend that, but then you like list the premises, and it's like, first of all, I'm skeptical of each premise. I'm skeptical that if the premises are true, the conclusion would follow, so that the argument is valid. I'm skeptical of. So every part of it I'd be skeptical of. But I don't know if the reasons I have for being skeptical of each step are really like substantial, because there are smart people that disagree with me. So I really think that once you start realizing there are smart people that disagree with you, it changes things. And that in philosophy, it's really easy to come around and say, look, you're all fucking bunch of assholes. Can I say that? Sorry.
Yeah, you can.
But it's really easy to tear down other people's views. It's extremely easy to do that. But it's really hard to say to yourself, why would a smart person who doesn't agree with me say that?
Yeah, but would you say that perhaps some of your emotional feelings towards, well, I don't want to be an armchair psychologist or anything, but like,
no, you can. That's fine. Yeah.
Okay, then I'll be. So like, you clearly have had some experiences in the past and early childhood. You've realized some things. Would you say that might play a part in how your slightly cynical outlook about these kind of ideas of reasoning to God through something? Like, would that explain why you are so fond of this Kantian idea of criticizing traditional reasoning to God, or no?
Certainly it's part of it, because I know, like, just personally, when I was first told that I like owed obedience to someone, I was like, yeah, right. And the reason why I objected was really kind of that it's not rational to require me to worship God. Or to put it differently, that it's irrational to punish me for choosing not to worship God. So I was always told you have to, like, we owe it to God. And then I would say, why though? It doesn't make sense that we owe that. If someone gives you a gift and then expects something in return, they didn't really give you a gift. That was that's like my teenage level.
Yeah, that's fine.
That was that. And the answers that I were given just never satisfied me. Well, God wants us to love him. Why does a perfectly rational being want us to love him? What kind of desperate, needy crap?
But you don't accept
it. I just don't. It doesn't make sense. I can't understand that. A perfectly rational being doesn't have that flaw. They don't.
But traditional answers, like traditional answers about teleology, that it's part of human purpose to be in harmony with God, those didn't make sense to you either.
Well, if what you mean is to be in harmony with the character described in the religious texts, then yeah, right. I can't be in harmony with that person. That person's a mortal enemy of mankind. Like, there's no doubt about that in my mind. The person described in that book is an enemy of people. And in fact, when I was younger, I thought that Satan was portrayed as the good person, actually, the person who cared about people, who wanted us to know, and thought that we can make it on our own. Actually, that's what I got from the Garden of Eden story when I was a kid. I was like, so God says we can't understand this stuff. We're too childlike. And Satan comes down and says we can. He believes in us. And then, so anyway, so I know that's not the traditional reading, and people may be having their own views about that, but that's what I took from that story. I was like, so why is he the bad guy? What did he do that was wrong? The Satan character. Well, he challenged God. That was the only answer that I was ever given. So when I asked that kind of question when I was a kid, and I was in like my Sunday schools or my experience or whatever, I was just told that you don't ask that. He challenged God. That's bad. God said do this, and I was like, but
So,
he made us rational. Hold
um,
on, he made us rational. He gave us reason, and then he says we can't understand something. So I just, it doesn't make sense to me. So to the extent that I do care about reason and intelligence and intellect and all that stuff, anyway, so yeah, you don't give that to me and then say subjugate that to the higher power. Reason
So,
is a source of freedom, not
so
a
Richard, my view has been that those like those kind of things are really normal for people who grew up religious. I grew up, I had nothing to do with Catholicism, and at 17 I had the. Do you have anything going on?
Oh no, sorry, just
Oh
something.
yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I was just listening because if anything, you can go anytime. I mean, we don't.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not worried. No, I have this
So
time set aside to just talk
yeah,
to
that's
you.
fine. So like, I had the same kind of time when I was 17. I abandoned. I became an atheist for the same reason. But my sense is that we should outgrow those rebellious phases as we grow up. So, for
But I don't
example,
think it's a rebellious phase. I
you
think
don't.
that actually I have. So what I'm talking about is that it's illogical, irrational to demand that a free creature worship you. And that actually is an inappropriate attitude for any free creature to have towards any object. So I don't think that's just rebelliousness. I think that that's that you need to, the other side needs to provide an argument why it's rational for a free creature to give up its freedom, and that doesn't make any sense. So that's a paradox. Why would you can't use your freedom to give up freedom? So the very concept of requiring obedience seems to me to be needing justification, and it's never given. It's the only justification that's ever given is that he'll smite you. You'll be smited. You could be turned into stone, possibly sand, hell, shore, torture, burning, lake of fire. Those aren't convincing reasons to reason, to rationality. Those are appeals to emotion, to fear. Those are ways to control. So I want reasons. I like rationality. I want arguments. I want justification. I don't want to be told I will be smited as an answer to my question.
All right, so we'll come back to that, but I just wanted to touch on this because a lot of my viewers want to. You went on Tom Jumps for like the umpteenth time channel, and
Yeah,
and you had some interesting objections to his epistemology.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I felt bad about that because I felt like I was a little testy, actually, in a way that I shouldn't have been. But sometimes I think of myself as a regular person, and then I have to remember.
So, what are your objections to those kind of weird views that Tom espouses? And by the way, me and Tom are like on friendly terms. I mean, we don't like. We've debated, we've talked.
I like Tom. I respect him, and I guess let me, if I can, let me just preface this by saying something obviously, like you said, I had emotional issues with when I was a child and with religion, being raised in the household, and I was very, so I agree with all that. I think there's more to the objections I'm raising than that. But I also feel like I don't really associate with or identify with the new atheist movement.
You don't.
I don't. In the following sense, that I don't really agree with their rhetorical strategies of mockery and mimicry and what I think of as disrespect. And I remember seeing Dennett debate at one of these things, and he was talking about the spaghetti monster. I just found it disrespectful. I found it disingenuous, honestly. And I just felt like this is virtue signaling to the base, but it's not engagement with the other side. And I care about arguments. I like reason. I want evidence. I don't want to cheerlead and to mock and to yell and to criticize. I want to see evidence and evaluate it and reason my way to conclusions. So anyway, in that sense, I don't agree with the new atheist rhetoric of mocking and trolling but on the other hand, I can understand it because atheism has been suppressed and maligned in lots of ways, and still widely thought of as the most untrustworthy group of persons, and how could they be moral? Still question people ask, which is insane to me. I mean, excuse me, not just to say that, but it's just bizarre to me that someone could say, well, you don't believe in God, how could you be moral? It's like, have you read history? And most of the atrocities are by what? Anyway, so The point though is that I see some of that in the way that Tom engages, by just parroting the arguments and repeating back to the people sort of the same strategy that they come. And sometimes that's a useful strategy, but sometimes it's a way. It's not, to me, the way to move forward in the debate. It's a way to score points. But I do think that that Tom is a serious thinker and smart guy, and that the points that he's making should be taken seriously. And I even think that he has something interesting to say about morality, which, in terms of using simulated worlds and things like that to think about it, which is interesting and maybe a contribution actually. But some of the things needs to be worked out. And so while I'm have mixed feelings about education and college and stuff, I would say one benefit, and Tom's smart, doesn't need it, obviously learned a lot. But one thing you could get from doing that is knowing what other people have said and what the common objections are and sort of the way things go. And I feel like sometimes that's what's missing there, because of what we were talking about last time was about normativity and what logic. And so Tom must say, well, logic could be, because I guess one of the areas where people say you need some kind of foundation is in reasoning and rationality. And so logic, obviously, you want to say, why are the laws of logic the way that they are? And he likes to say, well, there's just some physical thing out there that explains it. And so I was trying to convince him that actually that doesn't really answer the question. Actually, it's not even really what the question is about. So that's, I don't know if that answers.
That's good enough. Okay, so Richard, may I ask you an honest question? Do you think from the new atheists like Dennett or those, do you think they've given us good reason to disavow traditional reasons for believing in God?
I think we already had those. I think what they did is vocally and loudly proclaim the things which people had already said, but like take the cosmological argument of any variety that you like. That's already been. We already know what's wrong with it, and where we've already mapped out that territory.
What do you think is wrong with the cosmological argument?
Oh well, P.S. The principle of sufficient reason is highly suspect, and we have no reason to think that it's true other than reason itself. So I guess you could. This is something that goes all the way back to those ancient guys we were talking about. So Aristotle says there's got to be something that explains why these things are the way they are, and other.
But that's not what Aristotle
said. No, there doesn't.
No, but that's not.
So
that's
why does it?
No, that's not Aristotelian argument.
Well, what is it then?
Well, Aristotle's argument is that for all motion in the world that we observe is derivative, and it has to derive from a fundamental cause. It doesn't say that anything is an explanation, but. That's besides.
But that's not the argument that I was talking about. So I wasn't talking about Aristotle's argument.
You're talking about Leibnizian argument. You're talking about Leibniz.
No, I was talking about Aristotle's. The use of the principle of sufficient reason was widely used in ancient Greece, by the way. So Aristotle used it in his reasoning and rejected, for instance, atomism and other ancient Greek views on the basis of the principle of sufficient reason. Because he said if those views were true, then there would be no explanation for why things are the way they are. They would just be chance. So that's definitely appeal to PSR. That's not Leibnizian, that's Aristotelian.
But you deny the PSR?
No, I don't deny anything. I don't think that we know that it's true. That's what I would say. So the principle is sufficient. Yeah. So why should there be? By what right do we demand to be able to understand or know the way things are? Science has shown us that probably we're barking up the wrong tree. So the way I interpret quantum mechanics is that science's job is to answer questions, but not to tell us about the fundamental nature of reality. That's not his job.
Do you not think that the whole idea of science and philosophy becomes kind of moot once we accept that there are things that we're asking why is the wrong question?
No, we are always asking why. It's a different kind of why question. So take the Aristotle. So the Aristotle's idea that there has to be a first cause is easily debunked by pointing out that there could be an infinite chain of causes. So the cosmological argument has to deny that there can be an infinite chain of causes.
But that's not Aristotle.
Uh,
Aristotle actually believed that the universe was infinite. He believed that there were infinite chains.
He didn't believe he. So Aristotle thought that there was a prime mover, an unmoved mover. That's what I'm talking about. A first cause. And so I'm not talking about whether space is infinite or the universe is infinite. I'm talking about where the causal sequence, going back in time, is infinite. And Aristotle, Aristotle denied that and said there has to be a first cause, which was itself uncaused.
Yeah.
And I just don't see any reason to accept that.
Well, for Aristotle, you're left with the impossibility that the power is both derivative and doesn't derive from anything. But we don't have to get into like the Aristotle debate. Because
but look, that's the whole point. So why? So Aristotle assumed the law of non-contradiction. So why assume that? Why assume that? What's the reason for assuming that?
Yeah, I mean,
be a dialethist. It's easy. So the Grim Reaper paradox, dialethism. Why not accept dialethism?
I've spoken with dialetheists. I've spoken with Graham Priest, and I don't have to. All right, anyways, we don't have to like get into sidetrack. So tell me a bit about what you think are. Let's go back to this. Do you think that there is any coherence problem with the idea of a mind of God? Definitely. You do think so? Go ahead.
Yeah.
But let me first summarize it before you go. So, like, our view is, now, again, depends who you ask. I hold to divine simplicity. Some people deny that. You don't have to get into that. Talk about a mind that can be omniscient, a mind that is infallible, a disembodied. Do you think there are coherence problems here, or do you just think, okay, it's coherent, but there's no evidence? Which one is it?
I think there are.
You study the philosophy of mind. This should be easy.
Yeah, I think the incoherency issues come with trying to understand the attributes of the divine mind. So, for example, if God has free will, but also knows what he will do, then I think that you have a problem there, which is akin to the traditional problem about God knowing what I will do, which some people think Plantinga has avoided with some modal logic, but why accept that version of modal logic is a question that you might ask. But anyway, I think that maybe God can't be free. There's a contradiction there. I think that there's a few contradictions, actually. God should be a dialethist, because I don't think God can know about quantum mechanics, for example, without failing to know about one or the other of particle or waves. So therefore can't be omniscient, given the way physics has turned out. I think that I think there's an issue with God's free will. I think there's an issue with being atemporal and acting in a causal way in the world. I think now you could say various things about that, but I don't think any of these are fatal. That's why I'm an agnostic and not an atheist, because I think you can say things that if you accept. I mean, if you bite this bullet and accept that assumption and leap to that bridge over there, then you can cherry pick your way on both sides. Remember, I'm an agnostic. I'll say the same thing I'll say the same thing to the atheist side. That's what gets me yelled at from both sides, which is fine. But you can there's a path, there's a space of arguments and objections, and you can cherry pick your way through that space and end up, if you like to think of it as a game, you can end up safely on the other side saying, I'm consistently believing in this thing. But man, you have to make a lot of assumptions that I don't see a lot of reason or justification for making.
So now let's talk a little bit about science. Now, again, I don't know you clearly are like close to the field of philosophy of science and stuff like that. So like my view has been that you can't really make sense of modern science without some view of function, some view of goal directedness, Aristotelian final causation. Do you think we can make sense of science without some kind of natural teleology?
Goal directed. Yeah, I can't. I do.
Purpose in it. Do you think so?
Well, so I think two things or three things. Maybe I think a lot of things.
Okay.
So like I like the like if I switch to the other side, I like the traditional argument from design. I like the fine-tuning argument. The fine-tuning argument is one of the ones I take the most seriously because I like physics a lot. So
Okay.
fine-tuning, and you know, I don't think it's a knockdown argument because of anthropics. I mean, there's a million escape hatches, but I still think that there's some evidence for design. Okay, so who's the designer? I don't know. I think my idea would be that the evidence for design is evidence that we live in the matrix or the simulation. So I think that we have more reason to think that the evidence of design points to simulated reality being what we live in right now than we have for thinking that that points to the existence of the traditional God. But what's interesting is that suppose we do live in a simulation right now, then a lot of things that people say about God will be true. Like God, the creator of the world that we live in, is not part of our world. They exist outside the simulation. The creator of our world is not bound by the laws which govern the way things behave around here. They're outside of the simulation. When I'm playing Halo, I'm not bound by the laws of the universe of Halo. I'm bound by the physical laws out here. So I'm outside of the simulated reality. So a lot of those, so from our point of view, that thing will be non-physical, not composed of the things that ordinary things we interact with. So now, will it be rational or a teenager in their underwear, you know, playing this simulated world? This, you know, with Donald Trump as president, makes me think it's not unlikely, and so forth. So I don't know. I would say, yeah, for every argument. So you say argument from design. I say, yeah, we're in a simulation.
Okay.
And
so does that imply? So does that imply that you're still? Did I cut you off too early?
No. Yeah.
Does that imply you're still very much fond of these skeptical scenarios where we are, you know, could be stuck in Matrix, could be brains in a vat? You don't think those are outlandish? You think that they are a real worry?
I don't think they're skeptical scenarios. So I've been convinced by David Chalmers' argument on this, and I think I had this view before, in some sense, before I read his stuff. But he shaped it up for me and really convinced me that, yeah, this is correct. So I think that if we turned out to be in the matrix or simulated reality, then most of the things I think are true are still true. They're still tables, they're still chairs,
so at that
they're
point,
still physical.
Yeah, I apologize. So at that point, why would you not look to some sort of idealism for an answer? Like, why would you not go into idealism?
Well, because if there's a hard drive, then it's not idealism. So in our world, so the basic idea is that in this world, the way we typically think of it is that, well, underneath the world of appearances, there's a bunch of atoms, electrons, and quarks. So in the matrix world, underneath the world we experience is a bunch of, well, what? Bits. Yeah, so it's not electrons and quarks, it's bits, it's information. But it's still just something underneath it which obeys some laws, some transitions are made, you interact with them, you have experiences as a result of them. So I think that in that world, it would be true that there's a table in front of me and so forth, and I was born at a certain time, etc. And that may be the way God created the world, by saying, let there be light, and hit the on button of the simulation, run 2021.exe, and here we are. So I think the evidence that the theist presents for a creator designer is better construed as evidence for a simulated world. And in fact, one reason for thinking this is that we aren't photosynthetic, for example. There are so many flaws in human design that the designer can't be a perfectly rational being, that we aren't photosynthetic, that we are not photosynthetic is one like massive flaw. The existence of carnivores, generally speaking, is a huge flaw that could only be produced by either a mean-spirited, malicious thing or by accidents. So anyway, and if you like the taste of food, then, you know, make sunlight. Photosynthetic reactions at noon can taste like ham sandwich, and photosynthetic reactions at 9 a.m. could taste like bacon and eggs. God can do anything. He didn't set the world up that way. So there, and that's just one flaw. I could think of like 1,000 other just total mistakes in human design that I could fix if I had full power. And in fact, when we design creatures, robots and so forth, we don't want them to have these flaws. And in fact, when we are redesigning ourselves, we don't want ourselves to have these flaws. So that just seems to me to be evidence that, yes, maybe there's a designer, but it's not, they ain't no intelligent, super rational hyper moral being, they're kind of like the opposite of that. So yeah, more evidence for simulation than the alternative.
Okay, so all right, so now let's go a little bit into morality. Now, you clearly had some strong views about what God ought or ought not to do, even if you believe he doesn't exist. Now, a lot of people would be wondering because we're
But I
interested.
don't believe that he doesn't exist. I don't have
No,
a
that's fine. That's
belief.
fine. But if he was, where he fictional or real, you think he ought not to do those things described?
Yeah, because I understand what rationality is, and it can
Okay.
extrapolate. While I don't understand perfect rationality, I can extrapolate to like
So
more rational than me.
yeah. So like, what are your views on morality? Where does morality originate? Do you have this view of it's some kind of hardwired mechanism? In which case, we have the question: why ought we follow that? Or do you have some other kind of view?
Yeah. So, I mean, I wrote my dissertation on metaethics, which is questions about the semantics of moral judgments and possibility of justification of moral claims. So I'm interested in this stuff, and I've always been a moral realist. So I believe in objective morality.
You do.
And yes, and I think that the sources of morality are the two obvious sources, namely sentience, the ability to suffer and feel pain, and rationality, reason. And so I think that those are the sources of objective morality. And there's philosophers have spent a lot of time developing accounts. There's utilitarianism, Kantianism, deontology, contractualism, constructivism. So I don't know which of those views is right. I have some sympathy towards a kind of Kantian approach, I guess, a kind of.
But let me ask you, point blank: do you object to divine command theory? I'm not saying I hold to it, but I'm asking, like, William of Ockham developed it. Augustine had a version of it. William Lane Craig is famous for it. What objections would you have to something like that? I don't hold to it personally. I hold to a hybrid view, but you tell me what your objections are to this view that God.
I mean, the first and obvious objection is the Euthyphro objection, which I think is should be dealt with in a more serious way. Does God command it because it's good, or is it good because it's commanded? So there are some people who take
divine command would be the second horn of the Euthyphro.
He commands it because it's good.
God, it is good because God commands it. So that kind of what's your objection to that?
That it makes morality completely arbitrary, and that no serious person holds that. So that it just conflicts with our ordinary notions of morality. But actually, that's not true, because there are some people who hold it. Like, I've met some hardcore versions of certain kinds of Muslims of Islam that says, yeah, if God says to chop your head off right now, I'm gonna do it. Like, this, end of story. One of the issues with divine command theory I've always never seen anyone really deal with, but it comes from Sartre. He called it the Anguish of Abraham. And he says, so, remember what Abraham was commanded to do, this sick and disgusting act of sacrificing his son. And he says, sure, homie, I'm going to do it. And so he brings up his son, and you guys all know the story. And so right as he's about to swing, the angel says, hey, don't do it. Kill the poor innocent lamb instead. Like, nice God, by the way. Yeah, right. So the story is, like, really, to me, just like demented beyond compare. But Sartre pointed out this interesting conundrum, which I think you guys, I think everyone has to deal with this, but it's the more divine revelation side has to deal with it. This precepts have really got to deal with it, which is, how do you know? So Satan's a trickster, right? Satan's evil, I suppose. He wants to mislead you. He can appear as an angel of light, by the way. In fact, he's described as beautiful in the Old Testament. So how do you know it's God speaking to you, commanding you to kill your child? He's doing something. So especially the problem is that God's commanding you to do something which is seen just straight up immoral. Kill your own son. Why? Just because God told you to. So does that seem like the thing that a perfectly rational moral being would command you to do? Or does that seem like the thing like an evil trickster, deceiving type of thing would do? Well, why do you believe that it's God and not Satan? It seems like there's reason to think it's actually the bad guy telling you to do this, because it's so immoral what's being commanded. And then the response is typically, no, I just know from like the revelation itself that it's got to be God, the goodness. you don't think that can be duplicated and you can't be tricked? Like, you think you're that smart? You're that check. That just is a comical to me that people that they feel like, yeah, we know what God commands because it's in the Bible. Yeah, right. Satan changed it. If there really is a Satan, you better believe he did. You think he wouldn't have? Yeah, right. So it's just like the whole worldview is inconsistent. And so it's just like the divine command theory doesn't make any sense at all. And then you look at what alleged things he actually commanded. Kill the unborn children in this city over here, put a sword through the pregnant belly of this woman. You're telling me the perfectly moral God commanded that? So I think I know enough about morality to know that that's just like immoral. So, maybe you can say, yeah, right. Humans don't know, and maybe God knows what we don't know, but that sounds like a desperate move to me. It just sounds like completely.
Okay, you mentioned a little about presups. I
just learned about them. So I was invited to talk to this Darth Dawkins guy, but
did you talk? Did you end up talking to him?
No, but somebody. Do you know this guy, Brother Darius, or something like that? I don't know who he is, but
I know Darth Dawkins. I don't know Brother Darius.
I don't know who he is, but anyway, he contacted me on Twitter and said, "Oh, I want you to debate Darth Dawkins." So I listened to some of the things that he's done. He seems like he's not serious in his. He seems like a troll, honestly. So I said to the guy, "I don't want to do this if it's not going to be serious." He was like, "Oh no, he'll be serious and he'll talk to you." And I was like, "So I guess if I go just expecting to be trolled, because I do think that I would like to understand like their point of view and why they." What they might say to this kind of
objection. Point of view. He's just going to ask you questions. But I mean, it will.
Yeah, but that's not going to be very interesting because I'm going to do the Socrates thing. I already know I don't know. Like, that's the whole point of philosophy. Like, Socrates says you can't even start really doing philosophy seriously until you get to the point where you recognize that it's all a fucking mess. We don't know, dude. And it took me a long time to get to that point, but I think I'm there now. I think I realized I had this experience once where I was like, after I got my PhD and I was like, I had a job and I was publishing papers and I was like, okay. And I had this feeling of like this sensation of climbing up to the top of the mountain and feeling like I was like, I understand something. And then I saw from the top of the mountain, all the other mountain peaks like surrounding me. And I was like, oh shit, this is just the beginning. This is not the end. This is just the beginning. So I think it's really humbling when you really take seriously these ideas that we show up here without a user manual. We don't know what's going on. People leave. We don't know where they go. It's like we're in this room. We're at a party. People disappear. Like, where'd they go? I don't know. Some new people show up. Where'd they come from? I don't know. Where did all like I get the puzzlement of all of that. It's if you're not puzzled by like that, then I can't relate to you. That's being human is being puzzled by that. I feel like part of it is. So I get that puzzlement, but I just don't see why the answer it's comforting maybe psychologically to believe, but I just don't see the reasons to accept that it's true, which outweigh the reasons to think that it's false. That's just it's as simple as that.
What were the videos that you heard from Darth Dawkins that made you think he's a troll?
Well, I guess one of them. Well, there's a couple. So first of all, he called himself the destroyer of worldviews. So that to me just is comical. Look, I don't know how much people know about me, but I didn't have like a normal childhood. I guess I'd say I was arrested as a kid. I went to juvenile hall.
Who had a normal childhood?
I used to play in a death. What?
Who had
That's a normal childhood?
Who had a normal childhood?
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So I used to like to get into fights, and I was playing in a death metal band, and so like there's a part of me where it's like if you want to like get, like to quote the famous philosopher Pop Smoke, talk nice or don't talk at all, right? That's if you want to come at me and like be disrespectful and rude, then I'm happy to like smack the shit out of you. Or that used to be the old me, and I've tried to grow out of that, honestly, to be honest. Like I've tried to be like, all right, that's not nice. These people want to learn, and if they're serious about, and I want to learn too, by the way. I'm not trying to say no, like I'm here to learn as well. But what I'm saying is like there's two sides. Sometimes philosophy, I think of it as like a blood sport. Like you're going on a drill. Like you want to send your worldview out, it's going to come back wet because I'm going to.
Do you think that Darth Dawkins has succeeded?
Do you drown them in the water? But then I think that that's not conducive to knowing the truth or to understanding another person's point of view. or to seeking why an intelligent person would hold a view that I don't accept, which to me.
Do you think that?
But anyway, I don't think he's interested in that.
Do you think that Darth Dawkins has succeeded in destroying your worldview?
No, I don't think he has. Well, maybe he would. I mean, my worldview was destroyed a long time ago, since I was fairly confident that the answers were obvious and easy. In fact, I had a professor in grad school tell me once, he was like, he said something, and I said something, and he was like, Richard, that's why you're a philosopher. He's like, you think you know the answers to all these questions. And I was like, yeah. But then I realized later, like, no, that's very arrogant, stupid. I don't know the answers. That's the point of philosophy, is to show you that you don't know the answers, and to ask you to examine your most fundamental assumptions and beliefs. So anyway, so that's, I think Darth Dawkins isn't interested in that. And, I heard him talking about when he won the one exchange I had, he was talking to somebody. I don't know these people because I don't really do this. I don't like this online. Like if you're going somewhere and you're saying they were destroyed, then I'm basically, is that really what I want to be involved with? That's not what I want to be involved with. Really. Yeah. Even though I do feel that attraction, like I'll fucking destroy too, dude. Like, but I want to be better than that. Actually, I don't think it's good to be that way. And so, so one of the things he was saying was that once they finally was opening up a little bit, was like, he was converted to Christianity by reading the Bible at a young age, and he felt like the word of God was revealed to him, that he understood, that something spoke to him, that he had this personal experience, that convinced him of something. And my response to that has always been like, yeah, I've done ecstasy too. It's fantastic. But like, how does that tell me anything? Like, I just don't know what that has to do with anything. And I read the same book and saw something completely different. So it seems to me immoral of a God to hide like that. And this is an objection I've always had, just downright immoral for something so important to be hidden from us. It's completely just unacceptable for God to choose to reveal himself to one person and not another, and have everything at stake. Like everything, your eternal life, salvation, happiness, have all that at stake, and to play this game where you pick and choose who's going to be elevated or revealed. And so if Darth Dawkins is right, then God revealed himself, because I read that same book, damn it. I read that book every day. That's how I was in a religious household. We read the Bible every day for an hour in my household. That is not an exaggeration. I read the entire thing front to cover. I know what's in there. I'm not one of these atheists that's like never read the Bible. I've read it. That's why I'm disgusted by it. That's what's wrong. I know. I read it. It's there. And there are nice parts. Don't get me wrong. There are nice parts. There are poetic parts, but then there's all kinds of other just wackadoo stuff in there. Anyway, so he read that book and said God revealed himself. I read that book and said there's a mass murderer psychopath on the loose. So if Dawkins is right, Darth Dawkins, then God revealed himself to him, but not me. And that's immoral. It's wrong to do that because I care about the truth. I actually want to know. I've actually thought about this my whole life. I've examined every piece of evidence that I've ever come across. I've never rejected any line of argument just by fiat. I spent 2 hours arguing with Tom Trump over the ontological argument, trying to convince him that it should be taken seriously because I want to take things seriously. So you're telling me that it's okay to deny me knowledge, but give it to that fucking troll? Are you kidding me? Like, it just seems odd. Like, all right, so I know I don't know a lot of things, but that can't be the way things are. That can't be right. So yeah, that's one of my big issues with presuppositionalism, generally speaking, and with divine revelation and divine command theory. The whole picture that knowledge by divine revelation is required for anything just strikes me as wildly implausible and immoral.
All right, Richard, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Sorry to be ranting a bit, but I mean,
we wanted you to rant. We don't want you to bore us. We want you to rant. So, Richard, a couple of questions that are personal. First of all, Bobby Boy wanted to know how tall you were.
6'1".
Oh.
With this, maybe 6'2".
Yeah, you're pretty tall. You're pretty tall. All right,
Okay.
so let's see. A Trainwreck wants to ask you, do you recommend, can you see the comment?
Yeah, Bible or Quran?
Yeah.
Well, you should read both. I mean, I've read the Quran, I've read the Bible, I've read the Talmud, but not seriously studied the Talmud, I shouldn't say, obviously.
You read the
But the Bhagavad Gita I've read. I mean, you know, I'm interested in this stuff. So I don't know. It's interesting. I guess I would say the Bible first, only in the sense because the Quran comes later, so it's sort of the sequel. And a lot of the same characters show up. Sarah, for example, Moses.
Richard
So it
Romantic,
helps to know the characters.
Richard Romantic wants to ask you, well, maybe it was directed to me, but I'm going to direct it to you to make you feel awkward. Who
Okay.
killed more people, Hitler or the Roman Catholic Church? My response was that death killed more people. What is your answer?
I don't know the numbers, but probably it's an empirical question that I can't answer. But okay. I wouldn't be surprised if it was the Catholic Church, because I would say that I have no. I mean, I know you're a Catholic, and I don't mean to offend you. And I know that there are good Catholics, by the way. I know lots of good. I work with a Catholic priest. He's a friend of mine. I work with him. I'm not against Catholics, but I think the Catholic Church has been one of the greatest forces of evil in the history of mankind. And that doesn't mean every individual Catholic is evil or a force for evil. Lots of them want to do good. And community engagement by Catholics is wonderful. And there's outreach in the community and all of that stuff is great. But the church itself, over history, pure evil. Except for recent times. Pope Francis I'm a fan of Pope Francis.
That's actually funny.
Traditional Catholics are not. So it's so interesting to me that I'm finally like, there's a Pope that I'm like, wow, a real fucking Christian dude is Pope of this goddamn thing now. And the Christians are mad. They're mad because they actually got someone in there who's doing what the scriptures say. Pope Francis is the real deal, man. He's a Christian. I respect that. So I know people are mad about what he's doing, and people are saying it's heresy. And you know, I've seen people say that. So that's your view. That's fine. I don't believe that.
Okay, QWERTY wanted to ask if he being you, if you're skeptical of a priori reasoning, do you justify that the external world has the regularity to condition us to the habits that lead to inductive reasoning? You can read it. It's all displayed on the screen.
Yeah. So I don't know what the a priori bit is doing there, because the second bit is about the problem of induction, which I think, is a serious problem. And I'm not, to be honest, sure that the problem of induction was ever solved. I think people got bored with it and kind of moved on. But it's not 100% clear to me that, so the external world appears to be regular on the basis of experience. There are mathematical equations which describe those regularities. We know them because we've discovered some of them. Those mathematical descriptions were very rarely discovered a priori. Newton's laws for equations, for example, were deduced from data, from looking at actual Kepler's data. And so, of course, you could derive some of that stuff afterwards, and that was done later, but from more fundamental principles. But that's a different project. That's not how we got them. So the sense, look, I like a priori reasoning, and on Tuesdays I love a priori reasoning, and I do it sometimes. But I just am, I don't know, like I think the Grim Reaper paradox is a good example. So take the Grim Reaper paradox, which is what is that supposed to tell us? So, all right, you have this period of time between, n and n plus 1 hours, 8 and 9, whatever, 10 and 12, whatever. So there's a continuous period of time. There's a Reaper at every continuous moment. So you die by 9 o'clock. Great, wonderful, fantastic. But no Reaper can kill you because there's no closest Reaper to you. So anytime you get to a Reaper that's going to kill you, the Reaper before should have got you.
You should have got you.
So there's the Grim Reaper paradox. All right, so what does that tell us? Oh, some people say, now I know time is not continuous. Let the fuck you do, right? What we know is, or what you know is like infinity obeys axioms which defy classical ways of interpretation. That doesn't mean that the reality doesn't have infinite periods of time. It means maybe even bounded infinite periods have no first number. And you may think that's a contradiction, but the math works. It works. So I don't think I experience is what justifies the regularity of the world. A priori reasoning, what justifies that? I don't think we have found a justification for a priori reasoning, to be honest with you. So the best we have is that sometimes it works. And look, so there's Gödel's proof, right? And it shows that there allegedly are sentences that we know are true, but which can't be proved by formal systems. And people say, so we're not formal systems, right? Well, yeah, or we're formal systems that don't know our own Gödel number. In other words, we're formal systems that are incomplete, like every other formal system. We just don't know it yet. So why are we so confident that we aren't incomplete formal systems, that our reasoning abilities aren't bounded in the way that every other formal system is? Lots of people are confident that this is not the case, but I don't see the reason to be so confident.
All right. I don't think any more questions have been coming on, and we've been going for an hour, so I think you have to...
Yeah, this is fun. I mean, I don't mind answering questions like this.
Yeah.
And
All right. Richard, thank you so much. It was very good. Awesome. We look forward to seeing more work from you, and, keep up the good work.
Yeah, you too. Congratulations on your podcast. So can I just ask before you boot me out of here, why is it called Global Skeptics? Because I don't really consider you a skeptic. Is it that your guests are all skeptics, or?
No. Global Skeptics is kind of my respect for some Cartesian views. I guess that's why I'm not a skeptic in the sense that I believe that we have foundations for knowledge, but I think, I have respect for some kind of Cartesian method of inquiry. I'm a big fan of Descartes, if you can tell. And we've hosted some of the biggest names. I mean, Saul Kripke. I don't know, like, many people.
I know, I watched part of that. So.
Yeah, Saul Kripke. We hosted Lawrence Krauss, many people. And we only continue. I mean, we have many other people.
No, that's awesome. Why are you doing this? Can I ask what's your...
It's fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. I wish more people like you did this kind of stuff because it's fun. So
today we have a debate with Joe Schmidt. So you guys need to all come at 6:30, I believe. I'm gonna go watch some football. I'm a big fan of football.
Is the debates on the same channel?
Yeah, we're gonna be having.
I'll check it out definitely.
Yeah. And thanks so much to you, Richard Brown. We love seeing you on Tom's channel. That's always funny.
Thank you.
And I love watching you here too. Okay, guys, subscribe. Everything.
I subscribe, guys. You should too.
Yeah, and go and check out Richard's stuff. I don't know if you have a YouTube channel, but you definitely have.
Yeah, I do. Richard Brown Philosophy YouTube. Yeah.
You should have told me. I would have included it here, but I'll include it afterwards. So
I got 14,000 subscribers, man. I'm a low-key small channel.
14,000?
Yeah,
that's not small.
It is. My YouTube channels. There are reaction channels. I have 2 million subscribers.
Oh wow! So yeah, guys, look forward to the debate. Go and subscribe to Richard's channel. Go and follow him on Twitter. One Brown Philosophy or something like that.
Thanks. Keep up the good work. I really admire the way you respectfully engage these hardcore issues.
YouTube.
So thank you.
All right, take care. Okay, and have a nice one, Richard. We'll see you. Okay, everybody. We'll wrap this up and see you at 6:30 to have a discussion / debate with Joe.